Hello, HEMA friends, and welcome to this new video. Today I'm here with my friend Julian. Can you present yourself, by the way?
Yeah, I'm Julian Ronneberger. I'm part of the Spadone project, and you might have seen us too in a recent video where we visited a museum together.
Of course, it was a pleasure to visit the museum in Zurich with you and also to try out that beautiful replica of the Federschwert which are stored there. And I was greatly interested in them and having the chance of testing them with you, even if some time passed, admittedly, since then. We had to make this call a lot of time ago, right?
Yes, I think it's what, 6 or 7 months or something.
Oh,
Was it February or March? I don't
no.
remember.
No, 6, 7, no. But yeah, a lot of time. March it was.
Uh, yes, yes, yes.
Very good. So, yeah, what you think about this? Let's start with your questions, and I will answer you if you have any question about how I felt about them.
Yes, I mean, I train with this weapon all the time when I give classes and with friendly HEMA clubs. So of course, for us, it's interesting what other professional HEMA practitioners think about it.
So they
If you could
said.
notice, yeah, if you could notice a difference and so on. And
Okay.
of course, I think it's what I wanted to point out still. It's a different kind of sword that you normally prefer, isn't it? Like shape-wise, and even when you put it historically, this is not your kind of
Yeah.
sword, maybe.
Yeah. It's not, let's say, my kind of sword on average, but let's say that I had a few impression about them, and some we briefly discussed it after it about a number of them. The first one is something that you actually said in relation to binding, and I think that it's true that there is a difference in that sense, and it is mainly related to the fact that I suspect, in my opinion, the shape of the blade is different. Also, the flat surface, I suspect, is something that influences a lot of this kind of thing. I suspect, well, of course, when the blade gets thinner at the tip, of course, the difference can be relatable to that kind of thing. But also at the medium or at the strong, the fact that there is that squared kind of shape. I honestly suspect that that's one of the most important features in these regards, because if you don't have like a perfectly flat, let's say flat on flat, in a sense that flat of that square, flat of the edge, it makes sense, right? If you don't have a perfect flat of the edge on flat of the edge kind of binding, you feel that bind. So it's just a question of half degree, and you are into that kind of binding sensation, which I suspect it's something peculiar of that kind of blade shape. And it's possible, I felt, considering that my style of fencing is not extremely binding related, actually it is not, but I had the occasion to feel it every time we ended up in a binding which occurred for more than half a second, let's say. And even when the blades were, let's say, the blade, instead of bouncing, they were bouncing lesser. So that's the correct way of putting it, because of course, if you clash with two pieces of steel, there is always some kind of bouncing. But the fact is that there was lesser bouncing with this kind of sword. So it reflects your ideas on the subject.
Yes, I obviously feel the same, and that's why I love them. For me, they feel more present,
Mm.
if you can say it in that way. Like, and also the German concept of fühlen, which you have to have when you bind
Yes,
or
yes.
even just clash shortly. With this sword, I realize where it is and how much pressure you give. And that is normally for myself harder with more modern swords. that are harder tempered and have a different blade profile. So yes, as you said, the bind for me makes it more present in the sense I feel more what's happening.
Yeah, yeah,
And less bouncy. It's still bouncy, but less bouncy. So for me, it's I have to work more. I don't know if you felt that, but when I said, yeah, you need to, if I want to push your blade aside,
yeah,
I need to put myself behind it more than with a modern sword that helps in that regard because it's.
yeah. I will probably add that that thing is also probably related, and eh, I don't know if it's true, but in my perspective is that the mass, so the amount of metal that you have on the various parts of the blade varies in a way which is chances it reflects more the way in which the amount of metal varies in the average, not always, but the average sword, because you tend to have a lesser wide on average again, lesser thick, etc. Sword at the tip, not necessarily always, not as necessarily in every single case. Sometimes you have an enlarged tip, etc. It's a thickener, it thickens, etc. But in this case, you anyway have, in my opinion, if we had to cut down the sword in pieces and weight every single piece of it, I would say that there is far lesser metal on top. There is more on the middle, and there is a chances a greater amount at the forte. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I suspect that if this is the case, and I'm not sure about it, if it is the case, this may help in this regard. Does it make sense to you or not?
Yes, in a certain degree. I mean, here it's just a bit distributed different than if you take a sharp sword, for example, and you have more in the forte and it gets thinner towards the tip. Yes, it also gets acute in the point. While we have not an acute point or something, and I measure a lot of sharp swords. Uh, yeah, okay, this is more extreme for sure.
Yep.
But if I have a rhombic, for example, even like with or a stocko with a spear tip nearly, there is more metal. And here, yes, it's thicker, less thick than a sharp swords often, but also it's not that wide. So there's not more mass,
Okay.
or maybe there could be the same amount of mass, like to a certain degree at least. I
Yep.
mean, we are at like 8 millimeters here. A lot of original swords are 8 millimeters
Yep.
in that regard, and then still have the edge coming down on the sides.
Yep. Yep.
But some are less. So it goes in the similar direction.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I wouldn't say that what you said is wrong or anything. I can see what you mean, I think, from the feeling, and it surely helps. And I think this is the reason why it is like this. For me, when I cut with a sharp sword, I mean, I don't have the resistance of another sword normally. But when I hit mats or pet or whatever, bottles, I have the same kind of feeling like with this.
Yeah.
And we tried, playfully, very securely with some sharp edged blades before. And yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
It
feels more
resembles
like
it.
this. Yes, it's not the same, obviously not, but it simulates it more than what I normally used to use in HEMA at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this makes you, and now I really need to, as I said, I need to do way more with my body, which is nice because, as I said, for me now techniques work differently. If I need to push away your sword now, I mean, I always propagated this in a Krumpau or something. You need to put your body behind it. And often the students just use the motion and think, oh, yeah, this is enough. And then they can't get through with the technique because the other one just holds the sword against, it bounces, and you need way more to work. Here, the one that tries to parry or deflect or whatever needs to actually push away. Otherwise, it stays. So both have to work more openings, and the techniques work more in the sense how they are written,
Mm-hmm.
at least the German ones, because I practice more German. And this is what's the amazing part for me, because this changes perspective. I used to fence with Aureus, Enzifer, Regine, so with a lot of different ones.
Yeah,
And you adapt.
true.
But for me, it's often like, why is this technique written like this? It cannot be executed like this in the most controlled circumstances, or in sparring, it doesn't work that often. Can be a problem of the practitioner, no question. But it's interesting that it works if I use this blade.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I see what you say.
it might be not that big of a deal for other people, but for me and for Cyril and Daniel Jacquet that look closely at this is very interesting, of course. I don't know how much you've had the impression this really changes something or not. So yeah, would be interesting
So,
how much you see a difference to what you normally practice with.
so like being 100% honest, I will say that um, it is not something magical that you say, "Oh my God, it's 100% different now. I can see through the code of reality, etc." But because it changes that, I don't know, like 3%, 4, 5 of.
For me, it's more, but okay.
No, no, no. Or like to me, honestly,
Yes,
it's,
yes.
but um, I don't know. To me, it's a smaller amount because I'm looking at it at the perspective of my whole fencing. Maybe it is also because the greatest majority of my fencing is out of the bind, so I am also influenced by that. But uh, anyway, by my own perspective, it is like 5%, and that 5% anyway influences a lot fencing because that 5% anyway is in binding conditions. I will say, I don't know, 30% maybe the difference. So yeah, so there is in the bind there is a great difference, something that you can feel. You can feel quite a lot of the difference in the average sparring, in which I may have, in which I fly around with my sword, blah blah. Yeah, it's lesser, but it's still substantial enough so that I can just tell you, yeah, I remember about it, even if it was like 5 months ago, 6 months ago. So yeah, there is a relevant difference, and that's what I think is important because deciding to go for a different blade, we are very influenced by we are socialized, and we are social animals. So everyone is using weapons made in a certain way, and so everyone wants to have the same thing, more or less, or we want more of the same thing, and we see it in contents also. Funny enough. So in this case, it is the same, and like having relevant changes requires a spirit of innovation and exploration, which is maybe not for everyone, but if someone has the money to spend in this regard, I will probably advise to try, because like buying a couple of them, even for maybe buying it with I don't know, for the club, but not maybe at the beginning for the single person, and try out the difference, especially as I said, for people which practice German longsword, because in that regard it is even more relevant. And not that it is not for Italian fencing, but I suspect that being heavily, like binding heavy, uh, German longsword may be greatly influenced by this. What do you think about it?
Absolutely. I mean, this is, and we talked about this in the video in the museum. This is for a very special type of fencing. This is after the swords that were meant for the Fechtschule, where you are not allowed to thrust. where you are only trying to make the bleeding head wound.
Yep.
You can't use the pommel and so on. So this is a very specialized tool for a very special type of fencing,
Yep.
which, on the other hand, was very common in the Holy Roman Empire, at least, with this kind of swords. And we have that in the beginning of the 16th century. We see the shape slowly evolving, right, or end of 15th century, and then until you can read about Dresden Fechtschulen in the 17th century, still using these blades.
Yeah.
So in that context, I think it's very important, but it's not trying to simulate like a longsword for the battlefield or something, or a duel on the death. So this is, I think we have to take this into account. But why I still propagate this shape is because in nearly all HEMA clubs, we have something that tries to imitate this.
That's true.
They all have shields. They have this thin shape afterwards. They're not using the longsword you would carry around to go duel and kill people.
True.
At least most. Not everybody, of course.
Yeah,
but
indeed.
The majority. And in that regard, I would still recommend to try for everybody, because exactly the bind, as you have pointed out, feels for me more like not the same, but it goes more like in the sharp weapon thing. And if you have a system or a school or tradition that is bind heavy, and we have a lot of binding in the German school, it's really nice, as I said, when you read the text and see, I get the whole idea better than with other swords, for example.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Also, we fenced for how long? I think we fenced for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty long sparring, actually. Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
So, we are still measuring other accent examples, though. At my new workplace, we also have an original that is differently shaped, similar to the one that we didn't look at in Zurich.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what else comes up, if it's still similar to these two famous examples from Zurich, or if that varies already, if that is a different feeling again. Is the temper the same? Everything. There's so much to still see. So the really question is what you in the end want to achieve. And our idea was, we don't fence with the tools that they fenced with.
Yep.
With the manuscripts, like a lot of people practice Meyer, and this is going in that direction, but they're not using something that he would have used.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's true, actually.
Yeah.
It's fun, and it's funny at the same time. I mean, like, to an extent.
Yes, because everybody could just have more longsword type things and say, okay, we're not trying to do this Fechtschule. We are thrusting at each other. We are stabbing. We use pommels, depending on the situation term, and we wrestle everything, stuff that you were not allowed to do when you were fencing in the Fechtschule. No?
Yeah.
But still, we tried to come with something like this.
It's true. Well, I don't even know why behind of this choice. When you start in one direction, then you keep going with it. I'm not necessarily even like, I suspect that having a flat blade, in the sense of like the modern Federschwert, let's say, it makes the creation, like the actual building of the tool easier, etc. You can just cut it down very easy, blah blah. But this doesn't explain anyway the shield, actually, for instance, or like.
I think also what changed, sort of interrupting,
No,
is
go for it.
When you look how old HEMA is, how it's practiced now, and for when these swords, there are very few of them like were even a point of interest for someone. And most manufacturers, if they were lucky, had a catalog picture, maybe the dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody had, or I'm not aware of, X-rays, hardness test, flexibility test of originals.
True.
And now that exists. So the data was just not there when people started, oh, we need now the tool. And look, in Maya, the sword looks like this. We're not going for the classic longsword look or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're going for what we see in that. And it's more safer because for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And this definitely feels, we didn't thrust much at each other, I know. But as I said, for me, this feels nicer being hit with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you consider that they didn't wear any gear back then and still needed to go to work after a Fechtschule
Yeah.
and not be mush or dead, happens. But not that often, and not with these kind of swords. It happens with rapiers.
Yeah, and it makes
And,
sense actually.
but it's very rarely that something bad happens with these. And I think,
Yeah.
they thought about this.
Oh my God, they were thinking about these things back then.
Probably.
Probably.
So if you all put this together and with new things that we find out, because they now get interesting for this field. Before, weapon enthusiasts were not interested in 5 practice swords. They are not for war. Like, when you look at it from a historical point of view, how many weapon experts or something looked into these compared to, oh, this is a sword from this find and this and this. It's such a little percentage.
Yeah, I understand.
Because we have so little, and it's not the main focus. It's not a weapon of war, only with sports and interest in that. And from back in the day, and of course the martial culture in these events where you gather to fence with these, then slowly it comes. But that's not long. That's like some decades now.
Yeah, indeed. Well,
and yeah,
no, go for it.
No, I'm drifting off. I wanted to know how you like the sword in fencing.
Sorry. I was following you down in the rabbit hole.
Yes.
No, well, to sum up my experience with it, well, I mentioned about binding, I mentioned about bouncing. That are the 2 main things. The way in which it behaved in a sense of, I would say, actual dynamic. There wasn't a huge difference. I mean, like, not necessarily. I will not say that it is not different by a standard Federschwert in general. It is simply that I used so much tools in the years that in terms of dynamic, I mean, everything is more or less fine, and it was different from many other things. It was pretty agile, I would say. I liked the dimensions, the ratio of handle and blade. That's probably one of the things which I liked the most, actually, because that thing actually changed the dynamic, of course, but this happens in many different contexts. If the weapon is shorter or the handle is shorter, blah blah. Most probably the way in which the sword flies around varies by a little percentage because of how the blade is shaped. We think that there isn't air drag with our sword, but there is actually, yes. You can feel it when you have a feather which is even a millimeter wider on all the length compared to another, and then you feel that there is the air drag. So I suspect, for instance, that with this kind of shape, because you feel the air drag most at the tip because of like physics, leverage, etc. There is a difference in that sense. It is not something that I remember as something, let's say, great for me because of the variety of tools that I used. I also own a number of sharp swords, Uh, so yeah, in that sense, yes, you probably feel a little difference. Probably it's in between, in this sense, in between the sharp and the blunt, because. But yeah, then I don't know. Thrusting, I remember that we also did a little test at the beginning of before starting the spar, etc., just to test how the flex was, and I was pretty surprised. But I also noticed that it wasn't, it flexes differently because the dimensions of yeah, the dimension varies, the thickness varies on the length of the blade, so the flex varies in this sense. Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, that's pretty cool. Can you do it again? Actually, it's actually super cool the way in which yeah, the the flex is different. Actually, it's is something that I suspect will modify also the way in which we fence sometimes. Actually, you know, landing like a flash, for instance, with a standard feather, and this one would be slightly different because of the way in which they, like this one is in a sense, even if it flex, it has a little bit more like stopping power. Now we can greatly be okay on the idea that a sharp sword doesn't have stopping power, of course, but the idea behind this quality in aspiring is that it relates to you to the fact that getting hit by a tool, it's a bad thing. So there is this aspect of it which is interesting. Anyway, it is flexy enough to be safe and practice with. So I like it. Well, something else to say. I'm thinking about little particulars or tiny stuff, but yeah, let's say that this is the most important aspects I can remember of with but which I remember pretty well about it. So and yeah, even I'm super try to be super pragmatic and honest. Even if as I said, like for me, for my style of fencing, the difference is in order of 5% or whatever. I suspect it's big enough to make a solid difference in especially if you train with it a lot. We adapt to tools, and we adapt our fencing to tools. So probably this one it's more toward something that a person which wants to recreate, let's say, historical fencing, in a sense that we want to recreate how people fought back in the days, etc., compared to historical fencing as 2025 practice with scores, etc. I suspect that this is more toward the first kind of historical fencing, and I would. At some point, I will probably go for a couple of these tools. Honestly, I would love to see in the future, like a tool with this shape, which doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. I know, like
Yeah, yeah,
it
absolutely.
it would be lovely to see some kind of maker say, "Hey, we can make one of these just for you to, if you want to buy it." I mean, like it would be cool. So
Absolutely.
so this is a shout out for all of you who are making swords out there. Professional swordsmith, start making Federschwerts, please. Like the real one, like Fechtschwert, because otherwise my friend Julian will kill me. Off camera, of
It's
course.
okay. On camera, I can't kill you.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
that's the only motivation why.
No, that's very good feedback. And I mean, it's a lot that you remembered for like 5 or 6 months that has passed.
And
So,
luckily, I have a very good memory. Sometimes it bores me.
yes, yes, yes. No, greatly appreciate your feedback.
You're welcome, man.
And yeah, maybe we fence in the future again. Who knows?
I hope. Of course, remember that I will publish only the footage in
Of
which
course,
I win.
of course.
That's the rule.
That's
That's the rule
that's the rule.
of the YouTuber.
That's okay. This is why you have, as I said, this is why you have more followers than us. Follow the donor project.
Because I always win. Yes, of course. No, I'm joking. Well,
Yeah, of
actually,
course.
your channel. Actually, go subscribe to the Spadone Project YouTube channel and also follow them on the social media, etc. Because they're making a great job. By a research perspective, far more important than me, because like I am doing research only on our manuals and stuff, like very basic things, and instead you are going to measure the tools, comparing them, data stuff, manuals, and sources which are not necessarily possible to read by like standard people. So you're doing a great job in the sense, and you deserve more followers. And
Thank you. Thank you very much.
you're welcome, man. And so I suspect we said everything about that nice and sexy Federschwert. Damn, I'm dead. No. Man, thank you
Well
very
done.
much.
Thank you very much. I was gonna make a bad pun. I'll not do it.
If you want, go for it. If you want.
I'll write it later.
Okay.
Okay. No,
So
thank you very much.
again, so thanks for watching, people, as always, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.